So first of all, the dollar hasn't collapsed yet, but it's been on the brink several times. I mean, it almost collapsed in 1987. It almost collapsed in 2008. So it's been, near death, and then it's, revived. And so the question is, the next time the dollar falls the way it did in 87 or 2008, what if it keeps falling? What if there isn't a miracle to save it? That's what my thought is that how can you press your luck? Because I agree with what Brent is saying in that I'm right inevitably, but the timetable is difficult to tell. What if the imminent threat, or not maybe a threat, is that the dollar goes up before it goes down, because in the long run, it's
cross currents at play, right?
But here's the thing. How do you know when you've arrived at the long run? Because you can always say it's a problem in the long run, it's a problem in the long run. So that means eventually you're in the long run. Except when you're in the long run, you still don't know you're there, right? You still say the same thing. It's a problem eventually. So at some point, somebody who thinks it's a problem in the future is going to be surprised because they've arrived at the future, right? There is no more can caking, because I'm sure it's not going to be, we're going to get to the point where it's a crisis. And then all the people who have said, hey, it's only a problem in the long run, they're not going to suddenly say, yep, it's a problem right now. They're not going to know it's a problem until it's a crisis. So it's going to have to happen. So the question is, can we do it again? The enormity, knowing that every time we have to go back to QE, we have to do it bigger than the time before. And because the problem is so much bigger, right? We have a much bigger drug problem, so we need more drugs. Can the U.S. get away with it yet again, given how big the numbers already are, how large the deficits are, how large the Fed's balance sheet is, how screwed up the economy is? Can we up the ante again and expect the rest of the world, given all the problems that the rest of the world has, to finance it again, to step up to the plate and loan the U.S. enough money to let us get away with it one more time? I just don't want to make that bet. I realize, yes, that's the trend. We've been able to get away with it all this time. So let's, just roll the dice and assume that it happens again. But knowing that eventually it has to collapse, I would rather just say, you know what, I'm just going to prepare for the collapse. And if we get away with it one more time, well, I'll have to ride it out one more time. I've done it several times before. But, I would rather be prepared for the end game, because that's the only thing I'm sure of. The path, it's difficult. What would get me to change my mind? I don't think I can change my mind because I know I'm right. But it's possible that Brent is right and that before the dollar crashes, it has another big rise.
Or what would make you change your mind just in the short term, I guess? Maybe in the next 6 months or a year, to where you'd say, I know what's going to happen long term, but the dollar might go up to 105. Well,
I guess if it does. I guess if it does go way up, I'd have to say, I guess I was wrong about that. It went up. But, it ran out of steam around 2000, around 105 on the dollar index is where it ran out of steam when it had that initial rally early in COVID before it sold off. And so now we've kind of double topped up there. We're not at 120. We got up to 120 in 2000. If you remember that big dollar bull market, 2000, 2001, the dollar was higher on the dollar index than it is today. So we haven't come anywhere near where we were back then. And of course, if you look at where the dollar was in 1971, before we went off the gold standard, you got 360 yen for the dollar. It's not even close. The Swiss franc, you could buy the Swiss franc for 25 cents. It's now $1. So the dollar is nowhere near as strong as it was in 1970. And it's not as strong as it was in 2000. So it's going down. It's just been going down slowly. And it has big rallies on the way down. But at some point, I just think it's going to implode. And I think that is the next crisis. I know I've thought that way before, but I'm even more, convicted on that now, because every time we avoid a dollar crash, we just make the next one that much more inevitable, that much worse.
Do you think if the Fed can get, let's just hypothetically assume they can get up to 2%, do you think that would be bullish for the dollar short term?
Well, if they could get to 2%, and the economy hasn't imploded, then that would certainly be better for the dollar than if they can't get to 2% because the economy implodes and they have to cut. So I think it would be better for the dollar. The question is, will the dollar be higher if they do that, or just not much, much lower.
Right.
Because I do think there is, a high, given the enormity of our trade deficits and our fiscal position, I think there's only so much higher the dollar can go. I think it runs into a lot of problems. And I do think that a lot of the major holders of US dollars are net sellers. I mean, I think that if you're sitting on a pile of US government bonds and you look at a chart of US Treasuries going back to the bull market that began in 1980 and that I think ended in 2020, and now you're staring at a multi-decade long major bear market in US bonds, and you're just sitting on a pile of low-yielding US Treasuries, you want out.
Before we continue, help us clicking that YouTube like button and subscribe now to our channel. This shows the algorithm that you valued this information. And it helps us spread that message. Sharing is caring. And now, let's continue.
I have bad news for you. If you're not rich by now, you're screwed. And if you're in debt, you're even double screwed. How so, you might wonder? Well, the sad truth is that you're working your whole life to make someone else rich. The mega corporations, the banks, the politicians, everyone is getting richer. They get your money. And what is even worse, they get your time, they get your life. You are not even in a rat race, you're in a financial prison. But what could a solution for you look like? Honestly, I don't know, but I know what a solution for me would look like. It's very simple. I use whatever money I have and I multiply it with 1,000. This could make my life much easier and probably yours as well. If you have $1,000 available and multiply this with 1,000, I believe that this could solve some financial issue for the one or the other. Of course, if you're ugly, you would have to multiply it with much more than 1,000. My name is Markus Dahn, and this is what I decided to do. I decided to 1000x my money. This is not a joke. I know what you may be thinking. What is this guy talking about? How should this work? This is not possible. Well, I made a detailed video where I laid out my plan. And some clever folks might even want to look at this plan and copy it and do exactly what I do. This is just a little hint on the side. You have two options. You leave, you forget what you have seen. You do whatever you're doing and you hope that somehow you get some other results. Good luck with that. Or you click the link below the video. You enter your email address because I'm not showing this to everybody. You at least watch my video on how I plan to 1000x my money. The choice is yours. Make the right choice. Join me. See what a different future you could have. See at least how I intend, how I plan to do the 1000x. So click on the link below, enter your email address, and I see you on the other side. Your Markus Dahn.